Good day, everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about the properties and the actions of herbal medicine. The properties and actions of the herbal medicine, we're mainly going to focus on these 5 aspects. In other words, we're going to understand each herb from these 5 categories, the 4 properties, or the natures, the 5 flavors, the meridian tropism, the ascending, descending, floating, and sinking, the toxicity. So when we talk about individual herb, what's the nature of this herb? What's the flavor, or what are the flavors of this herb? And these nature and these flavors have their own specific function, have their own specific actions as well. So that's how we understand the function of the herb. The 4 natures of the herbs mainly focus on the characteristics of each herb in terms of the cold, cool, warm, or hot. There's another one, neutral. So actually there are 5 properties, but just because of the habits, we always talk about the 4 natures. Previously, we have mentioned that there's one herb called Huangbai. Huangbai can be used to clear the heat, to dry the dampness, and can be used for jaundice and diarrhea due to heat and dampness. But the question is, why does the Huangbai have this function? The reason is because the Huangbai has the characteristic of cold. So Huangbai is a kind of cold herb. A cold herb can clear the heat. So cold and cool herb it's in a yin category, and a yin category can clear heat and purge fire. Can cool blood, can nourish yin, can clear deficiency heat, can cause diarrhea, can cool liver heat, can cool the heart heat. So the last two actually just another way to say that it can clear heat in different jiangfu organs. So a cool or cold herb can clear heat, can purge fire, can cause diarrhea. The reason why a cold herb can cause diarrhea is because the coldness may affect the spleen, can cause the spleen coldness. The coldness in the spleen will result in diarrhea. So for instance, a patient after taking the herbal medicine from you, and then the patient gave you the feedback that after taking the medicine, they suffered from diarrhea. Then when you receive this feedback, you need to revise your prescription. Is it too cold for the patient? Why? What's the reason for the diarrhea? That's how you can think about the prescription, which herbs you are going to use. The warm and hot herbs are in yang category. It can be used for warming interiors, dispelling cold, warm the liver and kidney, warm the meridians. So as you can see now, we actually use the different nature of the herbal, the different nature or different characteristics of the herbal medicine to treat our condition. For instance, a patient suffers from cold condition, suffer from cold syndrome, then we will use a warm or hot herbs, a warm or hot herb to assist. A patient suffers from a heat syndrome, then we will use cold or cool herbs to help. For instance, Herbal and Zimu. For the warm and hot herbs, for instance, 附子, 干姜, 附子, you will see in the acupuncture, especially when we talk about the moxibustion, we also will use the 附子 whiskey to apply on the moxibustion technique to improve the internal coldness or to warm the interior. As you can see, the 4 natures, they actually develop from one root, from cold, cool, warm, hot. The temperature, kind of temperature is not actually accurate, it's not a temperature, but the property of the herbs from the cold end to the hot, it develop. And beyond the cold, there's also extremely cold, that's even colder than cold, or extremely hot, that's hotter than hot. So that's the different characteristics of the herbs. The question here is, how do we determine the nature of the herbs? How to determine the natures? One of the ways to determine the nature is according to the response of our human body after taking the herbs. For instance, a heat syndrome, a patient with a heat syndrome, after taking 石膏, then the heat can be eliminated. So in this situation, we said that the 石膏 has the function, has the property of cold or cool. Another patient suffer from internal cold syndrome, and then after taking 附子 or after taking 附子 decoction, the internal coldness syndrome become better. Then we can say that 附子 has the function of hot, has the characteristics of hot or warm. For example, a patient suffers from cold lumps, cold hands and feet, or a lady suffers from dysmenorrhea, the painful menstruation, with a pale white tongue. And then after taking 附子 decoction, or after taking the formula with 附子, and then the hands and feet become warmer, the pain during the period reduced, and then and also the tongue become red or light red, not as pale as before. Then in this condition, we can conclude that the cold syndrome of the patient has been eliminated. So in this situation, we said that the 附子 has the property of hot or warm. Hot and warm, these two are actually in the same category. Which herbs have the hot property or which herb have a warm property? They all in yang category. Only depends on how much they can improve. If some herbs only improve a little bit of warm, or some herbs only eliminate a little bit of cold syndrome, then we said that the herbs have the property of warm. If the herbs can improve the cold syndrome a lot dramatically, then we said the herbs is hot. If another patient, after taking 石膏 and caused diarrhea, watery diarrhea, with pale tongue, the tongue changed from red to pale after taking 石膏, then we will know that this patient, the syndrome of this patient has changed from the heat syndrome to a cold syndrome. Though in this situation, we said that the 石膏 has the property of cold or cool. So until now, you will understand our treatments, we actually use the opposite nature of the herbal medicine to balance our human body. If you suffer from a heat syndrome, then we use the herbal medicine with the cold property. If you suffer from a cold syndrome, we use the herbal medicine with the hot property. That's how to balance the human body. And then when we talk about the heat and the cold, it's also not accurate because the heat, there are excess heat or deficiency heat. The cold also has the excess cold or deficiency cold. So that's something we're going to study in future. But just in general, we use different we use the opposite nature of the herbal medicine to balance the human body or to balance the human condition. That's the rule in our treatments. This rule can be applied to the acupuncture treatments as well. If a patient suffers from a heat syndrome, we're also going to look for some acupoints or some meridian that has the function to or has the property or the nature of cold or cool to assist. A patient suffers from the cold syndrome, we're also going to find some acupoints that has the function of hot or warm. Thank you for your attention. In the next video, we are going to talk about the five flavors